Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Thursday night, February 23rd In-Depth Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I want to pick up with kind of where we left off this morning. In that briefing this morning, we talked a bit about the new drought monitor, and I just want to show it to you again here. So what we're trying to assess here is how much of this drought picture has actually changed during winter. And we typically think that if you are, east of the Rocky Mountains, it's quite difficult to change the drought scenario throughout winter. It just historically doesn't change too much. But this has been a particular winter that, due to quite a bit of warmth, we've been able to see some pretty substantial changes in the drought monitor. So let's look at it a couple different ways. This is the latest update. What I want to take to you next is a map that shows you how much it's changed in the last 8 weeks. So again, when we look at this, these colors represent class improvement and these represent class degradation. So dotted throughout the southern plains and parts of the Pacific Northwest and then over Florida, these are areas that are kind of larger regions through which drought has continued to form. We're going to talk about why we might continue to see those areas staying dry going forward. Of course, when you look back all the way to the end of December till now, we've seen up to a 3-class improvement in California and parts of Nevada, Utah, and the Four Corner States, and then throughout the Mid-South, and in parts of the Midwest here, substantial improvement overall. And to give you the stat, this is the historical percent of United States land area in some form of drought, going back to when the modern drought monitor began in the year 2000 and where it currently sits. So at the peak of droughts at the end of last November, beginning of December, it was about 86%, somewhere in there. And now if we get the latest data here, it's still below 60%. We're at 57.5%. So big questions are, is this going to continue to drop? So we need to assess where this upcoming precipitation is going to hit and where it's going to miss, and that's going to be important to kind of get us set up for what's coming this spring. So let's go straight on into some soil moisture maps. I'm going to take you back over the same time period. This is December 23rd, 40-inch soil moisture, 100 centimeter data. And this is how much it improved by January 23rd. So again, you can take a look. This was the true extent of the fall drought, really just showing itself here across the Mississippi, Ohio, and Missouri River Basin. And then a month later in January, it had shrunk, and then this is what it looks like today. So over the last month, even though there's been quite a bit of precipitation, we've not seen change, especially in the plains, but we, of course, have a good explanation for why that is. But this has been an area that I've expected to see changes, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and haven't. Now, this current system that just went through did put down quite a bit of precipitation, including a lot of ice that came through parts of Iowa, southern Wisconsin, into Michigan. In fact, the National Weather Service out of Detroit has several great pictures to show you the extent of the ice. But notice through, coming out of Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, central Illinois, very heavy rain, northern Indiana, Ohio, this whole region has gotten a lot of precipitation here in the last 3 days. And what I'm curious about is how well this is going to absorb into the soil. Earlier this week, as I was driving home from Chicago, there was just standing water in all of the fields between Chicago and Champaign. So I know that the effect of some of this rain was to really start to saturate that topsoil. But speaking of the topsoil, there's a lot of different ways by which we can attempt to measure its temperature. But it's very difficult to get kind of widespread measurement of any soil moisture, any soil temperature data. And if we're going to talk about the temperature data here, this was today's GFS run here. And when you look at this, there's a couple of different lines. This is important for spring planting. Whenever your temperature at 4 inches gets above 50 degrees, you have that contour. And if it's below freezing, you have this black contour. And I'm just going to play this quickly, okay? What I want you to notice is that as we go over the next 15 days, okay, we notice that there doesn't seem to be any substantial and deep cold air intrusions that drop that 4-inch soil temperature back below freezing, deep into Kansas, Missouri, central southern Illinois, southern Indiana, Ohio, just that little area right in through there. There is still, of course, going to be quite cold air to the north, but why I'm looking at this so carefully is because I want to know how much of this is going to sink in, like how much of that is going to get down there and start to replenish those values. So another way to look at this is a website here put together by the National Weather Service. It's soil moisture at depth. I'll link this so you can take a look at it. It appears that the only stations that they've got are throughout much of the Midwest and Plains, but you can kind of click on any of the stations and kind of get an idea. For example, this one right here in South Dakota, they've only got a 2-inch measurement there, so it's 31 at 2 inches, just below all that snow. But one north of it here, 32 inches at 32 degrees, at 6 inches. So what I'm trying to assess is, where's the soil still frozen that it's not going to be absorbing in? And it appears that you've got to get relatively far south to get away from those, frozen soils, which means we're going to continue to see the deficits that we see in this area for a while, because underneath that snow, of course, the ground's still frozen. Now, speaking of snow, let's take a look at how much we did get over the last 72 hours. And to be honest, the models did a phenomenal job with this. The models picked up on this about 8 days before the event and painted this region from Montana through the Rocky Mountains, out of the Rocky Mountains, from Montana, going right across northern parts of Nebraska through Kansas, through South Dakota, getting into Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that area right in through there, some places picked up 12 to 18 inches of snow with a lot of drifting. There's a lot of water that's locked up in that snow, and that's great. It's really going to be a blessing once this begins to melt. More than half of this will probably end up in the topsoil. A lot of it will evaporate or sublimate, and some of it will run off. But I think about half of that water will get into the soil, which is really a desperate thing that we do need. I'd like to show you what it looked like. This is just a zoomed in map here on the upper Midwest and Northern Plains. I just love to see when things clear out, you can kind of see all of the land features because of the snowpack and all of the rivers and things like that. So this just gives us an idea as to where there is snow. And through parts of Montana, great. This was an area we had to fill in. The mountains got it. The flatter land that's east of the mountains here, the plains area in Montana got it, and we did get this snow to get pretty far down here to the south. So I like that. We've got more coming. All right, and where it's going to be really hitting is going to be the upper Midwest area. And the system that's going to do that right now is sitting just off the west coast. And this is an impressive satellite animation. So if we watch it in forward now, this is the low that's skirting along the coast. Remember, one of the key differences in this pattern is that these lows are not sitting over the mountains. They're not sitting over the west. They're offshore, which means they have the ability to pull that Pacific moisture in and have it get pushed up against, for example, Oregon, California, into Nevada. And this is a big system that's capable of pushing a lot of moisture. What I'm always fascinated by are all the little sub-vortices on the inside of these deep, deep, deep lows. And you can see this one right here. It's just kind of a fun one to watch as we rock back and forth here throughout the day on Thursday, just as the sun was setting. Okay, so what does that leave us with? Well, through this evening, this is what our all hazards weather map looks like. So as that low curls down here along the California coast, we've got blizzard warnings out, including the transverse mountains that are down here north of LA. And we've got winter storm warnings all throughout California, and this extends into the Four Corners states. The Arctic air that came into parts of the northern plains, giving us wind chill watches and advisories. And all of these polygons in here represent where there's flooding on the rivers right now. And as we watch this pattern evolve, we're going to see pretty wild swings in temperatures, and systems are just going to continue to roll like this and then quickly run in this direction around a large southeastern ridge. And just like we talked about on Thursday, I think the most important longer-term factor with this forecast is the persistence of that southeastern ridge. So we need to look at what might possibly displace it. Okay, let's go have a quick look at the latest high-res model. We're going to start this off at 9 o'clock on Thursday night. And you can see as one system exits, a little bit of lake effect snow behind it. The next system is just right here, just pulling along the coast. Now, the NAM model, did put down the potential for some very light freezing drizzle right here in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. But we'll have to watch out for that on the day on Friday. But what you notice here is that this low that's in this part of California, that's just the southern edge of it, really just drilling the moisture into California. We're going to take a look at the total snowfalls in just a few moments. Just want to point out that on Friday evening, there is the chance for a little bit of light snow to move through the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, and then into Ontario and Quebec. And then what we're going to really be watching for later is where this low emerges. Now, it is important to notice that in the latest model runs, getting out here to Saturday, there is the potential, as you notice here, right around like the Washington, D.C. area, to get a little bit of mixed precipitation. South of it into Virginia and North Carolina, mostly just some scattered rain showers. So just be on the lookout for that particular setup as well. But I do want to show you this. This was released by the National Weather Service out of Los Angeles, okay? And so to see them issuing, something about a dangerous winter storm is important. They give us that down there between 1,500 feet and 2,500 feet, 1 to 6 inches. But take a look, above 4,500 feet, up to 7 feet of snow are possible, or is possible, there in and around the southern mountain ranges in California. So this is a very high impact event that we need to keep a close eye on. So how much? Well, European model today, 12Z run, goes off my color bar. So I typically take my color bar up to 40 inches. So anything that you see that's in white is where the current European model run is putting down more than 40 inches of snow. And so we're going to be seeing 1 to 3, 1 to 4 feet of snow through parts of the Sierra Nevada and possibly higher down here in the mountains surrounding Los Angeles. So very, very deep upper level trough that's digging here into the west. This also puts snow in the Colorado Basin, the upper Colorado Basin, and then throughout parts of the Four Corner States and up along the Cascades. What this particular low does not do is deliver the snow to the northern Rockies. All right. So thinking about that, I do want to show you the current snow water equivalent map. This is from NRCS. And again, pause the video and just take a closer look at what some of these numbers represent here, because we're going to be adding quite a bit more to this area. So we're going to see this going from this 150 to up to 300% to probably being back up there in that 250 to maybe 500% range once we get all this snow in. It's going to increase along this Cascades, but not so much in the northern Rockies, where we still do need to get more snow into this area. All right, if we look at the snow another way, I've been really enjoying kind of seeing the updates of this map, because where we're going to be seeing some pretty big changes in this map as we go forward is primarily going to be here in parts of New England. This is going to be an area that's going to be seeing a lot of additional snow with this upcoming shift in the pattern. So from there, let's go have a look at what needs to shift around to give us a different look at this pattern. And I think the most important factor is this ridge right here. Since the beginning of this month, we have seen a persistent ridge over the southeast. We saw ridging off the west coast that's been slowly migrating to the west, giving us split flow back farther to the west, allowing the flow to come in to the west like this. And that's critical for the western United States. But without a big upstream block out here in the open Atlantic, or without maybe the subtropical jet pushing through this, like right through it over Florida, I just have to tell you that I until I have supporting evidence to tell me otherwise, this, this large ridge over the southeast is likely going to continue to dominate the pattern. So let me show it to you. I'm going to play this fast first. As you watch the pattern unfold into the first week of March, what do we continue to see the atmosphere doing? Dropping deep troughs off the west, still leaving this subtropical ridge over the south. There's several short waves that come around this. The flow's coming around this and just ejecting short waves out, and they're running up toward the northeast. But what we just get with this pattern is just persistent troughing in the west and a kind of frequently reinvigorated southeast ridge. So that pattern isn't fully getting kind of washed out. We just continue to see it showing up. So we have to ask what that's going to mean. Well, the next system that comes out, that's the one that's delivering all the snow to California this weekend. When it ejects, we do have the risk on Sunday night into Monday morning, early Monday morning, for strong to severe storms in Oklahoma. The Storm Prediction Center has been watching this for the last 3 days, and they continue to issue kind of advance warning in the region and through here that could see some pretty nasty weather. So we better take a look at it by doing our multi-model analysis. Again, with this, GFS is left, European is right. Now, I'm going to take you back because I want to show you the next system coming into the west and how well the models agree on it through Saturday and into Sunday. So that's some pretty strong model agreement there. I want to point out that on Saturday, where we saw the models the NAM trying to put down some snow around DC, see the little bit of mixed precip there? The European agrees with it. It's a little bit, but it's there. The GFS doesn't quite have it, but scattered showers throughout this whole area here on Saturday. All right, as we go forward, we're going to watch that first low eject. Now, the GFS puts the center of the low here. European's about in the same spot, but you can see the European probably getting the moisture more correct, spreading a much larger system throughout parts of the Midwest. And it will be, again, on Sunday night right here, in the overnight hours, that we're going to have to watch carefully for the risk of the strong to severe storms. Unfortunately, because this is going to miss Texas, this side of Texas, New Mexico, southeastern Colorado, western Kansas, I am concerned that given how strong the winds are going to be here, we might see yet another dust storm. We talked about that in this morning's briefing, but there could be another chance at having one of those here. Now this system lifts very quickly. It runs over the southeast ridge. It's got this negative tilt to the trough, so it really just pulls to the north quickly. And as you can see, heavy rain for parts of the Midwest and snow on the northern side of it. Some of this could be hitting, again, parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin that just got hit. Now notice the GFS is much, much more mild, and it's all rain in this area. So even as soon as Monday, we're seeing some disagreement in the models here. They do agree on another system coming down the west coast, and this again would be midday on Monday. So as that system slides east, this one, the one behind it begins to add more snow into the western United States and pulls its snow through the Rocky Mountains. It's in both models, but they start to split on what they're going to do with this system next Thursday. You see, the European model, slower in progression, still hasn't had the wave fully eject. It's there. See that? But if I take you back, the GFS has a wave up ahead of it right in through here, which could produce some severe weather over parts of the Mid-South. But the European, a little bit later, and a much more intense system after. Now, their trajectories going out there, this is more than a week out, are two entirely different scenarios. One goes right over parts of the Carolinas into Virginia. The European yanks this thing right toward the eastern Great Lakes. And I could show you the ensemble support for it, but the reality is there's too much uncertainty to even give you a clue as to whether or not one of these two tracks is going to be right. But what we can do, though, is we can just say over the next 10 days who is getting the moisture and who's going to be missing out on it. And again, lows are cutting in like this and then ejecting. So because of that, there's a large dry slot here. There's colder, drier on the northern side. So this is all the dry region. And the southeastern ridge here is what's shoving the systems north, keeping it drier than normal along the Gulf Coast, Florida, and parts of the southeast. But outside of that, this is an area that's going to continue to see repeated chances of above normal precipitation. And there's a benefit to this and there's a drawback to this. The benefit is going to be that this could possibly start to revive some of those deep soil moisture issues we talked about at the beginning of the video. The drawback is this is probably a signal that if we don't shake, means that this is an area that's going to have extremely tight spring planting windows, because throughout the lower Mississippi River Valley and through here, we're looking at planting now. I mean, it's starting to get going, getting that field work done and spring application on. So this is going to be critical. Where I'm missing it is really right in through here where you saw at the beginning. That's where drought remains. It's anchored in that region. Okay, so from here, I'd like to show you total snowfall. And let's do this for the whole United States, and we'll just play this out a little bit past a week. All right, we see that over the next week or so, we have the next system coming out, the one that could produce a severe weather in Oklahoma on Sunday, adding more snow to the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. Both the current system and the ones that follow it do deliver some snow into New England. We've already looked carefully at what's out there in the west. So if we zoom in on the forecast until next Thursday night from the European model, this is what we've currently got. Now this will continue to bounce around as we get better and better at forecasting the position of that second low. But as it stands through parts of central New York, over into Massachusetts, we see our heaviest snow band right in through here. And again, that's an area that's not received much this year. Will it get down to New York City? Will it get south of there? The current models are suggesting that this is more snow farther to the north. If we put it down into, looking at some probability maps, this is the chance of getting at least an inch of liquid equivalent out of the next 10 days. But we also want to look on the really wet side of this. So why don't we go up to, how about 4 inches of liquid equivalent? And now you see those really wet regions here in the mountains. That's why we're looking at 4+ feet of snow. But on the dry side of this, if we say what's the probability of getting less than a 1/2 inch of total moisture, now we can see those regions, plains, getting up into the Canadian prairie, that are out of reach of these next few systems in terms of delivering their moisture. So that's kind of the bigger picture here. Into week 2, this is what the pattern looks like. We continue to see above average moisture throughout much of the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, Mississippi River Valley through the northeast. The southeastern ridge still continues to sit here, and California appears in the models to have a little bit more of a drier look. We do see more of the flow coming into the Pacific Northwest rather than diving into California, but a lot of moisture is coming between now and then. That's really going to cap off what's been a great snow season. All right, back to the temperature side of this. Remember, we have these wind chill warnings that are out right now for parts of the northern plains. But how long does that colder air last? Well, getting into Friday, these are the high temperatures expected. As we go from Friday into Saturday and then into Sunday, big time rebound. So there may be places in Montana that rebound over 40 degrees just between high temperatures that we saw on Thursday and the high temperatures we're going to see on Sunday. This is the influence of that large southeastern ridge. So here we go into Monday and Tuesday of next week and Thursday. We keep a large warm sector open in this particular region. And again, my biggest question is, how long does that last? Because we've seen things attempt to undo it and outdo it. For example, the polar vortex is very much disrupted. It should be sitting right here over the North Pole, but it's now, it's east of Scandinavia. It's over parts of Russia, and it's just sitting there. This is a large displacement of those zonal winds. In fact, look how low it is compared to the historical average. But you see, you've got to get that cold air in the troposphere to line up underneath it. We don't have that. This is the look at the next 10 days. So the polar vortex is sitting and spinning here. And all around it, there's very mild air. We see, especially over Siberia, very mild air for this time of year. So where's all the cold air located? It's here. It's wrapping into the western United States. And so it'll be a competition between the strength of this ridge and the fact that we got quite a bit of colder air that's stationed in this part of the world, not spread out over the whole, parts of the northern hemisphere toward the Arctic. So that might be the one thing that could push through and give some cooler days to the southeast. And I think that's why the models are suggesting that as we get into that first full week of March, which starts right here, we're going to see sometimes the cooler air pressing out of the west toward the Midwest. There's two things I'm thinking about here, though. If the models have improperly judged the strength of the southeast ridge, they've got this cold air going too far. But there's a lot of snowpack here. There is snow on the ground right now, of course. Well, that's generous, but it's all through this whole area. And therefore, there's going to be a sensible heating issue in the model that could help it make this forecast that looks so cold so far to the east. See that? So we have to look at this a bit skeptically and watch carefully as the temperatures evolve over the coming days. But still, that southeast ridge is the thing I can't seem to shake. So if we look longer term, I'm going to take you to the newest CFSV2 data. This is the week 1, the week we're currently in, and then week 2 temperature patterns. This is all the same stuff we've been seeing in the CFSV2. If we go back, though, and say, well, what about the week 3, week 4? So this would now be the 9th of March through the 15th. You still see the influence of that southeast ridge. And even though we see some cooler air advancing in the middle March, almost approaching the beginning of spring here, astronomical spring, there's still some hint of a southeastern ridge. Now, on the precipitation side of it, we just look at the week 3, week 4, we again see what the models are doing, making these areas wet. This to me says dipping troughs, ejecting, and some sort of southeast ridge down here, probably keeping things wet. The European model, if we talk about temperatures, once again went over colder. This is March 5th to April 5th. It's got more of that colder air advancing east. But I'm wondering if it's an artifact of the recent snow and how cold the air is throughout the western United States. And I think an underestimation of the southeastern ridge. I think persistence is going to win the day with this forecast. I'm more than prepared to be wrong, but I think that's going to be a major factor. Now, on the precipitation side of it, let's look out there at the same time period. What does it show you? Same thing the CFSV2 did. Wet in the Mid-South, wet in the Midwest, wet in this region. And if that continues to carry through the month of April, we're going to be starting to look at very, very tight windows. I think the model's got too dry of a bias here, but I think it does have it right for parts of Texas. And as we get into April, I think the upcoming snowfall event is going to be what we need to cap off a great snow season for parts of the California, Nevada, and the Four Corners states. We still need more in the Northwest, though, going into March and April. All right, from here, I know that the MJO is out in phase 7 and 8, but this is what makes me think that you cannot use historical analogs with phase 7 and 8. It's how quickly we're seeing the rising motion traverse the whole of the equatorial Pacific and even a little bit into the Atlantic. That's too fast for an MJO wave to move to tell us that there's actually rising motion where we think it is. And look at this. This is the latest trade wind map, right? That tells us how fast the trade winds are. Now, do you remember for so long, these were all blues going this way, and these were the The reds, it's completely flip-flopped. So now what you have is trade winds going that way here and this way here. A lot of divergence here. And what's going on is that means there's sinking motion over Indonesia, which makes it look like there's rising motion here and rising motion there. Does that make sense? So it's all this kind of assessment of the vertical motion of the atmosphere. And it is not La Niña. This is the evidence that we were waiting for to tell you that this La Niña is broken, it's fading, it's out. We're going to transition quickly to INSO neutral. In fact, we're in that now, and it's going to continue. Okay, from here, I want you to watch this animation. And I want you to keep an eye right into this part of central Brazil. Because over the last week, there have been some absolutely massive storms. I got a message this morning from my friend that is down here in Brazil, and he said that over 600 millimeters have fallen from some of these storms. That's 24 inches. If I did that math right in my head, that's 24 inches of rainfall just recently, and it's beginning to cause some issues with the crops. Now, up until this point, I pulled up the NDVI data again for Goiás, for Mato Grosso do Sul. This is Paraná, down here Santa Catarina. This is Sao Paulo, and this over here is Minas Gerais. And these areas, the reason why I'm not including Mato Grosso, by the way, is because of how they're harvesting and planting. But in these areas which need to be harvesting soon, the crop is still very, very green, very healthy. It's not getting itself to dry down because of all of this very wet weather. So high NDVI values this time of year are an indication that the crop is not matured, it's not progressed, it's not finished. Now let's unclick these real quick. There we go. And I want to take you now down to Argentina. And this is really important. I went through all of the station data. I only found one station that spent any sort of significant amount of time below freezing last Saturday. Now, those are the official stations, but the pictures certainly give us evidence that there was frost damage, a lot of it in certain places. But the drought is what's driving this. The NDVI values, which were approaching normal, have now backed off again. And what we see over the next 15 days, the models trended drier again in the noon runs today for much of Argentina and have kept Paraguay and central Brazil, that area I was just discussing, wet. The drier conditions to the north, right here in Mato Grosso, this will help finished harvest and planting of the next crop. But we have questions as to whether or not we may see the drier conditions last. Before I answer that, as my last thing I want to do for you today, I do want to point out that the temperatures are really rebounding quickly, and it's going to get hot again throughout much of Argentina, more like late summer heat on this crop that's already been heavily impacted by drought and very hyper-local frost. But if we go back north, this is the newest update through April 5th on precipitation anomalies. If it is drier here, this is going to be a major benefit for getting one crop out and another one in. This is going to continue to probably cause problems, though, for Rio Grande do Sul. But the wetter conditions in northeastern Brazil and back over Mato Grosso mean that safrinha crop is going to get, if this verifies, exactly what it needs, which means we could be looking at a very large safrinha corn crop too. So we'll watch all of it. I'll report back to you again on Monday. Have a good one. Thank you.